You're listening to the Water in Real Life podcast, the podcast for people who want to become better leaders by becoming better communicators. Why?
Because those who tell the stories rule the world.
We're your hosts, the H2 duo, Stephanie Corso
and Ariane Shipley.
So without further ado, let's get to the show. Hey, y'all. Are you ready to nerd out? We are so excited about
We're back.
our guest. We're back. We're super excited to be kicking off season 5 during Virtual Catalyst 2021. I mean, this is first for us, and I can't think of anyone else I'd rather nerd out about as we kick off this season 5 than with somebody who shares our love for design thinking. We are so excited to be joined by Chris Pacione. He's the CEO and co-founder of LUMA Institute. He's passionate about universal design literacy, and he is a frequent speaker on the topics of design and innovation around the world. He is co-author of the LUMA system that we literally use every single day. We do. And the book Innovating for People, which I have now added to my Amazon book list. So, Chris, welcome.
Thank you both. Thank you both for having me. I'm excited to nerd out on design, one of my favorite topics, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So for all of our water fam in the room, or with your earbuds on, or just watching us on YouTube, as you know, we like to bring in guests who are not from the water sector. And so we have promised Chris that we will not quiz him on any of the things that we've talked to him about the sector, but design thinking has been so fundamental to the work that we do in building relationships with our clients, with the people we serve, with the communities that they serve, that I wanted to bring in an expert in the matter to talk to us about this as well. So, and Chris, as you're aware from our first conversation, we are super nerds about design thinking, but some in the audience may not be as familiar. Yeah. So can you give us your definition and a little about LUMA's approach to design thinking?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. I found that when trying to explain what design thinking is to people who may be new to the concept, that it's useful to clarify what design is first. and my go-to definition for design was put forth by a very smart guy by the name of Herb Simon. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, where I used to teach. But he's famous for his works and writings as an economist, not a designer per se, and a cognitive scientist. I believe he won the Nobel Prize for Economics in the 70s, I believe. He's a pretty smart dude.
Yeah.
In one of his books called Sciences of the Artificial, which was a book published in the late 60s and was especially influential in the design theory movement at the time, Buckminster Fuller, all that kind of stuff. He writes, and I have this committed to memory, everyone designs, let me repeat that, everyone designs who devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. I love that definition. And if you've ever taken a LUMA course or used our book, you will see that we are quite fond of this definition. And that's because we interpret this to mean that design is something that we all do. Although there are specific design professions for which people are trained, right? Fashion design, product design, building design. Simon says design is something we all do because everything man-made is designed. And not just tangible things like clothes and cars, but intangible things such as strategies and processes and policies and laws. And according to Simon, we humans make these things for one primary purpose: to change the less than optimal existing situations into better ones. Right? And so I often ask people when I'm speaking to an audience, and maybe I'll ask everybody here, but we won't have a chance to sort of raise our hands or respond. This is a podcast, but I'll often say, like, how many people here design? And depending on the audience, typically only 10% to 30% of the people raise their hands. And the reason is that they have been conditioned to understand design as this thing which only professional designers do, right? And because they don't make toasters and posters, they don't see themselves as designing.
Yeah.
But then I lay this definition from Simon on them. And I use it to help them see that even though they don't have a professional degree in design, that if they come to work, collaborate with others to get something new established into the world, then they're very much involved in the vital and communal act of design. Yes, products and services are designed, but so is everything from, the font in the book you were reading last night that the book was set in, to the paper it was printed on, to the technologies that we're using right now to create this podcast. And yes, certainly the laws, policies, communications, and infrastructure that bring us water.
Yeah. Especially our meetings. Let's start using design thinking around our meetings, folks.
Right. That's right. So that's exactly right. So after I've shared this perspective with people, I ask them the same question again, like, okay, now how many people here do that? How many people come to work and collaborate to get others to get new things in the world for the express purpose of transforming the existing situation to the preferred one? Right. And typically after I ask that question, 90 to 100% now answer in the affirmative. And as you can see, what I'm doing is that I'm not so much interested in sharing my definition of design so much as I'm certainly doing that, but sharing it in a way that invites them now to see themselves as someone who designs. And now when I say, okay, what's design thinking? They've inclined their ear, they're leaning towards, because it's important that, for me at least, that they see design thinking as something relevant to them. I am not there to present some semi-relevant abstract concept to people, but now they're sort of conditioned to listen that I'm going to define something that's very relevant to them and something they didn't realize that they already do, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a trick, but it's a useful one. And so having said this, when it comes to defining design, I'll typically say, when it comes to designing now design thinking, I will just typically say it like this. Now that you all design thinking is a mindset that helps you design solutions to your challenges that, increase your chances of success.
Yeah.
Help to do that thing you're already doing. And the key word in this definition is mindset, right? I think by mindset, I simply mean a set of attitudes, your mentality, your way of thinking. And I say this because the first thing I want to reveal about design thinking is that it's not some radically different or difficult process, but a way of working that is very relevant to you and intended to help you and the people around you design better solutions together. And so this is a bit of a dialogue, right? So often the next logical question is, okay, what is this mindset of design thinking, right? So we start and we unpack the problem. Now I have them. I say, okay, let me now share with you these attitudes. And here I typically default to the common understanding you'll find in many books and blogs and talks written on the topic and present on the topic. And there are 6 attitudes, okay, of design thinking. And again, if you've gone to our workshops or if you've gone to the D school, you will run into these. And the first is empathy, right? And that simply means that good designers, when faced with a challenge, seek deep understanding of those from whom they are designing for. In a world as uncertain, as complex as ours, I don't think you can empathize with your customers or your constituents enough.
Right.
You and your team's ability to listen to and appreciate their needs and desires and really all of your stakeholders, right? I think dramatically increases the chances that you'll actually design something that they find useful, usable, and desirable, right? And so empathy is critical. That's the first attitude, right?
Love it.
Design thinking. The second
I feel like
attitude,
I want you to say that over and over and over.
I know.
Again.
Say that again.
It's
empathy.
such an important message.
Empathy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Empathy.
Well, it's hard to do too. Empathy is one of those things where, if I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to be too empathetic, but it's critical. It's critical that we do that. The second attitude is questioning. Okay. Now here again, in a world, as complex and ambiguous as the one in which we live, it's critical that teams who are designing something for other people challenge their assumptions and be allowed to challenge the assumptions of others. Give them permission to do that.
Yeah.
And for me, this questioning mindset is not to play, just the role of devil's advocate per se. For me, it's really one more of humility in that, how do I say this? Good designers, in my opinion, question themselves as much as they question others.
Oh, good.
Right?
We're great then.
Yes.
And always in the spirit of learning. In other words, good designers don't seek to be right, but seek to understand rightly. Okay. And that takes a bit of humility, but that's that whole questioning attitude, I think, means always asking questions, always seeking to know more, and then questioning themselves and each other in a healthy dialogue and not being defensive. Now, the third attitude is being visual, drawing, making stuff, making prototypes, expressing things visually. When designing solutions, especially for complex problems, and the uncertain future we sort of look to, I think you and your team's ability to visualize what you're thinking and what the future might be like is critical.
Yes.
I think we all must stop thinking that drawing and making models is something that only artists and architects do, and start literally design thinking. Right? That's what it means to be visual. Put it out there. Stick people are fine. Put it out there so we have something to talk about. And somewhat related to being visual, the fourth attitude that we teach is that is being imaginative. And again, being imaginative might sound more like a skill than a mindset, but to me, to be imaginative in the first place is to have a mind that is not perplexed or flummoxed. Yes, and by the possibility of many possible futures. Yes, and it's to imagine and imagine well, I think requires an attitude of openness and inclusion to what could be, and I think rests on a certain belief that generating and considering a lot of different and possibly unconventional ideas. Right? It's not child's play. It's serious business. I think you have to have that mindset. So that's something that we certainly want to build up in people. The fifth attitude is to be iterative. It's related to that, right? It's you got to build something, but why do you build something? Well, we build in design thinking you build to learn, right? And so, I think one of the things it means to be a good designer, or I should say, a good designer, I think, assumes that in order to turn a concept, an idea, into a successful solution, you need to iterate to get there. Okay, that's the mindset. A person with an inclination to iterate assumes that she will need to go through countless iterations, right? And that there will be failure. And she's a person that has no problem with sharing half-baked ideas and messy prototypes because she cares primarily about learning and knows that what she's really doing through building and testing concepts, right, the iteration, is learning her way to that more preferred reality that Simon talks about. It's that iterative process. And that's an important attitude. I think that's critical. And finally, the sixth attitude is about collaboration. And I think the best way to sum up a person with a collaborative attitude is to say that the person assumes that the best way to combat the complexities and ambiguities you face in overcoming design challenges, I mean, just look at the world we live in, right? The best way to do that is through teamwork. I believe a good designer is one who, at the beginning, believes that the best way forward is paved with trusting other people, respecting them, inclusion of multiple perspectives, ideas, and the talents of others, and that the only way we're really going to tackle this thing is if we work together. And so that is, I guess, my not so in a nutshell definition of what design thinking is.
I love that.
Hey, we are all about the giant nutshells.
Yeah, you answered question 1 and 2.
Yes.
Done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Check. You're fine.
So efficient. Look at that.
But I'm so glad that I don't have to ask my question so much, because really it was just about that, that idea that you have to be an architect. Like when you Google design thinking, or when I did back, a few years ago, it's architect heavy. It's, engineering even heavy. It's all these other people that seem like they're qualified to do this. And so initially it kind of felt intimidating to say that I can be a design thinker. And so I really appreciated the LUMA system because, and this is like guys, we're obsessed with all design thinking. But
And
this
we don't get like any kickbacks.
We don't get any kickbacks from him.
Genuine love.
Genuine love that
love
it takes this grand idea, or what seems to be this grand idea of you have to be able to draw and like, come up with, and it creates these methods and recipes, and it's very much for the everyday person. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that. I'm gonna just kind of piggyback off your 6. It's not your 6, but it's design thinking 6.
Yeah. DT6.
Yeah.
I'm calling him now.
First of all, I love that, of course, everything about design thinking is human centric. And I love that that's number 1 is empathy. I'm super, if nothing else, I want people to walk away with design thinking is not this like abstract thing. It's these 6 attitudes, and anyone can embody them. Questioning. When you were talking about that, my thoughts were, when we first kind of started getting into this, like getting in my own head of like, what questions would I ask? Like, how do I do this? Well, that's what's so great about like your system is the questions are there, and all it's, you just plug and chug basically. It's a great,
plug and chug.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's just, there's a great flow, you don't have to overthink things.
I want to say what I thought when he was talking about questioning. I thought about our mentor, Greg Bukash. He is king of everything. But why? But why? And
that's a great question.
That's so strongly embedded in all that we do, to the point that when we are working with people, I have to put it out there and make a disclaimer that this is not the Inquisition, but we are going to ask you a ton of questions because number 1, we're curious. And number 2, like that's the greatest way to understanding is to ask questions and then listen.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Love it.
Yeah. And then visual, like not just you, but design thinking allowed me to tap into my 3rd grade self who used to love going to the library and finding the coolest art book to learn how to draw, as a 3rd grader and for whatever, all the grades. But then getting to that point in your life where you suddenly you're not allowed to do that anymore, and I use quotes for anyone listening, or you're suddenly, you've got to focus on this side and not that anymore of your brain. And so I was, there was always an element of this doodling or drawing. I loved to draw when I was younger. And I lost that. And so I loved getting back into that through design thinking. I'm not good. There are a lot of stick figures, but I have a lot of fun doing it. And I think that is a lot of fun for me, is coming at prototyping with even like using Canva, or sometimes, back in my day, PowerPoint to, just make whatever I could to show what I was trying to really convey. So
I could
give me like permission to get tapped back into that.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people really respond to the workshops and the programs we do. A lot of it's giving permission to do something that they don't have necessarily permission to do at work, or things they used to do, that sort of creative side. Drawing in particular is near dear to my heart. I gave a TED talk about 2 years ago on how to draw anything in the universe. And the whole purpose was to sort of open up people's willingness to go draw more. That drawing isn't a popularity contest. It's somewhere, you're right, somewhere in our education, probably around middle school, we were taught a couple of things about drawing that aren't true. We were taught that only artistic types can draw.
Or you had to choose band and not art. You had to choose one elective, not both. And and
we're
choir, and nobody wants to hear me sing anymore.
That's
I promise you that.
That's right. Well, and likewise, we were taught that it's not an important life skill. Drawing is about communication. It's a form of communication that we sort of press the mute button on, years ago, and stick figure whatever it takes to visualize complex ideas or what you're thinking. Words just aren't the only way, and there's nothing wrong with words, but you're kind of only using half of your arsenal of ways of communicating, and so that's why we encourage it.
I mean,
figures and all.
cavemen, and you can literally go to any country in the world and start
Right.
drawing to communicate. You don't have to speak their language. You can start drawing.
Right.
Yeah.
What were we thinking? Like, come on. So
fine, I'll start doodling.
Yes. So just to keep going with this, you brought up Greg, Stephanie, and I was thinking about him when he mentioned the imagination or be imaginative part.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's something that, again, we're taught to kind of put to the side for a little bit as we grow up. And I have 2 6-year-olds and a 4-year-old. So I'm in the thick of doodling and imagination right now. And it is like my passion in life now to never let them lose that, So I love, I'm giddy over this design thinking thing. It's truly amazing. And I'll let you guys talk if you want to talk more, Stephanie, about the iterative and collaboration. Cause I was just captured by those couple first ones big time.
Bit of advice for you and your kids. I think we stop drawing because we lose the reason to draw, because when we associate drawing and making with art and only art, it's like, well, I don't need to make art. Then we stop doing it. Sure. And I think there are a lot of reasons to draw other than art. One of them is understanding our world better. Science. I mean, look at most of Da Vinci's drawings.
Yeah.
They were studying things. But we can do that now. Like when we teach stakeholder mapping, which is one of the 36 methods that we teach in our system, you're creating a picture of the way the organization relates to one another. That is a picture that you're drawing that, and you're doing it to understand, right? So that's the one way, I think. So if you want to test kids in school whether they understand something, can we have them draw it? Like, could they draw photosynthesis instead of just writing it down?
Yes.
Because I think, God. So I think something like that would be great to see. And there's a reason. And the other one is just imagining the future, right? I mean, just creating pictures and storyboards and, here's how I imagine it will be. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not art. It's very much design. It's just trying to create a picture. I'm like, here is my vision of what I'm doing. And so if we did more of that, I think we wouldn't lose that skill.
So. I have like one little tangent, and I don't care if we edit this out or keep it, but I have to say this.
We're already there. You've already taken us well down the tangent.
I love it.
No, it's his fault.
We're nerding.
Chris's fault. Okay, so when I was in college, I studied wildlife and fishery science, and I could not remember the genus, species, all the names of the animal kingdom by just reading the words. So, but I'm visual about everything, and so I hand drew every fish, every bird, every animal I had to know about, all the pieces I had to know about them on a note card on one side. And then on the other side had a color-coded, genus, species name that associated some kind of way to make my brain trigger it. And I wish that I kept them because it was the most fun. I had them on this huge poster board, and I would just lay in bed and flip them up and read through them every night. But on my finals, after that, I made it rain at one of the bars. So I gave it to the world, so I just
gone forever.
Yeah.
I love it.
But it was the most fun. And so I think it really is important to allow yourself that freedom to do that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
That mindset change.
Well, I think the last two are just really important for our sector to remember when it comes to like iteration and when it comes to a human, we're focused on designing communication strategies and efforts that are going to resonate. And so like that's going to take some testing to do. And so as a perfectionist, as a recovering perfectionist, the idea of failure is just wonderful for me. So it gives you the permission to do that. And obviously collaboration. I mean, actually that's a great segue to our next question with collaboration, because that's why we're so passionate about bringing folks from the outside. Cause I want to hear outside of our sector, cause I want to hear about different perspectives and ways of seeing things and approaching problems. So, and I believe that our sector is not going to be able to change or solve our biggest challenges in this vacuum. We're going to need to bring others on board with us in order to do that. And with that mindset in mind, how does design thinking help us collaborate better?
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple ways I would answer that question. First of all, to me, collaboration requires alignment.
Oh,
And by alignment, I don't mean total agreement, but enough agreement so we can advance. And that requires me somewhat maybe giving up what I think, but in the collective, we've talked about this and we're going to move on. And alignment on what? Alignment on the problem we're really trying to solve. Alignment on what our customers are really trying to tell us, because sometimes it's not so obvious. Alignment on the best ideas to take forward. We've got tons of ideas. Which one's the best, right? Alignment on what to prioritize and what to deprioritize. Alignment on what good looks like, right?
Yeah.
And I think this alignment requires dialogue. That's the collaboration. And I think design thinking, in particular, the system of methods that we teach, plug and chug, they I love that. I'm going to use that. They give people who are coming from different backgrounds a kind of lingua franca to design and collaborate, or do what we would say. How do we make things better together? Right? Structures. Yeah, I think structures are our work. How we collaborate. Right. And in this day and age, most problems I think are wicked. You might on the surface think that a communication problem is simple, but boy, when you take into account all the different hearers and the audience and the mode and where they're going to be and what they might not, it just.
Yep.
And so I do think, going back to this idea of collaboration, it does require different people with different skills and different backgrounds to come together, right? But together, right? This is collaboration. Together, empathize with what the people are trying to say. Together, imagine and develop concepts that could solve the problem. It's that how they do it together, not somebody coming in and everybody just voting yes or no. It's actually building those things together. And one of the main values of the LUMA system, right? We don't teach design thinking as a process. We're careful to teach it as a system. With a system of methods is that they are very easy to learn and adapt, right? As you guys know, they're kind of deceptively powerful, which means they can be taught and used by a wide variety of people in a wide variety of different circumstances. Okay, a good example of this is like the problem framing methods that we teach. There's just 4 of them. There's dozens of problem framing methods out there, some really good ones, but there's 4 that we teach in our system, and we think if you kind of can grok these 4, you can do a heck of a lot of cool work. But one of the first things teams need to do is align on what problem they are solving. Like the last thing you want to do is march down too far and realize like, oh, I thought we were solving this problem. Or as I've done in the past, I did a great job solving the wrong problem. That's happened. And I was like, and so, but the question is, okay, we know we need to be empathetic and, questioning. And these are like high order maxims. How do I become these things?
Yeah.
But how do I have a conversation about the problem? The methods in our system that we teach, like abstract laddering and problem tree analysis, what there are practical ways of having those critical conversations. And in this case, aligning on the problem or the problems that need to be solved. And typically you would combine them with other methods. We might come up with different expressions of the problem, but we might come in with a little visualize the vote or rank them or take them to our customers and say, is this the problem? Is this a good way of the problem? Test them out. And so we combine the methods in different ways to help us get through what we're doing. And I think that's important to solving some of the biggest challenges and collaborating better. You have to have like the problem, I guess the problem that I see with design thinking, and I think as an obstacle, is that it's presented as a process, right? If you I bet you when the first time you Google design thinking, you saw this sort of honeycomb process.
Yeah.
And my advice is that don't teach, learn, and apply design as a process. Learn it as a discipline or a set of skills. And I think that many people and organizations struggle with the practical application because they fall in the trap of teaching and learning and therefore applying design thinking as a one-size-fits-all process. Look, let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with adopting a process. Okay, processes, whether they're for innovating or agile or stage gate, they're quite good because they help to provide teams a path forward. They time box their efforts and give them a way of measuring progress. However, when it comes to teaching, learning, and applying design thinking, you need to be careful not to treat what is a mindset and a set of skills as an orthodoxy, right? Where it is perceived as just another linear process among many. I'm going to use the design thinking process now instead of Agile. I'm like, well, no, Agile's design process as much as Scrum is, as much as everything. The idea behind the system of methods is that they are modular and adaptive and underpin any kind of process. So I don't care if you're doing an Agile sprint or you're trying to solve a very simple problem at home. You can utilize these methods in different ways, combine them in different ways to help you reason through the different phases of a process. So, and just to nerd out a bit, if you Google again, you'll see that recently there's been a lot of criticism about design thinking, right? You may have run into haters, yeah.
I mean,
but you know what? I think teaching design thinking as a process is what is behind much of the recent criticism.
Sure.
And you know what? If that's where they're coming from, sign me up. I would agree, because it's like, I understand the need for a flow, a bit of an arc to the work, but that's not what design is. I mean, design is what we do every day. Tomorrow I have a meeting where we have to sort of have a hard conversation about priorities because I can't get the various stakeholders to agree. I'm ultimately trying to get to a place, but I've got to deal with that situation. And I think design thinking, taught as a system of methods, helps you get through those little obstacles and hurdles. And that's what makes it practical for people. I think that's what people like about what we teach and equip them with.
Yeah,
Wow.
I really like the way you say that, because I was thinking about with the methods that we've learned, the recipes that we've made, it's almost taken the pressure off of she and I as the facilitators, because it's not our questions, it's design thinking's questions, that are making us work through these really hard conversations. So it's almost like when we're going through the methods, it's like, we're going to ask you a whole lot of questions. We're going to ask you some tough things. We're going to talk through some tough scenarios. We're going to make you think about those stakeholders, all of them. It's to me, it's always taken this pressure off of me personally or her personally having to come up with this, these interrogating ways that
now you can just say it's all Chris's fault. So.
Yeah. So now it is your fault. But I mean, honestly, it's structured, like it's changed the way we do the simplest, like meetings. Let's take meetings. I mean, everyone in utilities knows that, if it's not a 4-hour meeting, it doesn't even count,
Yeah.
Right. So, but we all are dreading those and they get a lot of nothing done. And, and not just your system, but design thinking, when you come to a meeting with this agenda behind, with design thinking in mind, it really just kind of focuses you on what do we really need to accomplish or what do we really need to get through. And it just,
I think
the
what we're trying to
mindset
do,
change. It is.
And again, the mindsets are the higher ups, but the system that we teach is the way you develop it. It's only through daily practice and you want to be more empathetic. Okay, learn how to go and interview and watch and learn from people.
Yeah. Yes.
You want to learn how to be iterative. Okay, go learn how to make things, and you can make things in different ways. And then that's making, and then go look at it, looking, understanding, making, right? Yep. Go look at it, test it. There's ways of testing it, and then understand it. Okay, so we got all this feedback. What does it mean? So we can go make again. You see, there's a bit of a loop there in the way we work. And the methods are meant to give us a way. They're instruments to give us a way of doing the actual collaboration, asking the tough questions, asking somebody not only what they think, but giving them a way to express it and document it in a way that means something, as opposed to just like jotting it down in a parking lot or something like that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up prototyping and testing, because that's going to segue nicely into my next set of questions.
Okay.
And we kind of, when I first talked about those 6 attitudes, like I said, iterative, you take that on, and that's because that is so, I want to come back to that and talk about this more, like prototyping, being iterative. I can't even say that word with a country accent. Testing, it sounds so, research engineer, those guys over there doing
also
that.
Scary and overwhelming, because I have
scary
to
and overwhelming.
people.
And what I'm, it's exciting because for the public educator, for example, who's trying to come up with a new program to educate about water conservation. They have to go through a series of prototyping, testing.
What does that mean?
So
how do I do that?
They're not even realizing. I know I wasn't realizing that I was doing that the whole time. I just didn't have a label for it. So it's really not this crazy ambiguous thing. It's just, did this work? No. Why not? Let's try this over here. Like, I want to know more from your experience. Like, how do we prototype these communication, education, public outreach? Like, how do we do this?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Because you're talking about the more intangible things, and again, intangible things are not traditionally called design.
Not toasters and posters.
That's right. But I think the answer is to think about the medium of such intangible things. So, for example, so let's take communication. Let's I think you use throughout a couple of things like communication, education. Let's take communication for a second. If there was a particular message you needed to communicate to a particular audience, right? That's the goal. One way you could prototype that message is by trying to sum it up in a fake tweet, or perhaps let's create a TED Talk. How would we say this at a TED Talk? Or perhaps a poster you might find on a street. And I think creating such tangible representations of your communications and then testing that out, right? You can create these things and like, let's say you created 4 tweets and then you put it in front of people and say, how do you respond to this? Or 4 different posters. How do you respond to this? Doing that is a great way to test it out. Not only what you want to say, but maybe how you want to say it, because you guys know as well as anybody, it's not only what you want to say, but the medium is the message, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit. So I think it's being creative about how we can prototype something quickly. In the end, it might be a full lecture or it might be a printed document. But think about ways to quickly prototype different ideas and get them in front of people. I think would be the first thing. So it is kind of making it tangible. But like education, I think that's another great example. If you think about the forms education can take or be expressed through, it gives you a clue as to maybe what we can prototype and test, right? So, for example, you might create a syllabus, right? A syllabus is a representation of a form of education. And, okay, so I've created this thing. Let's do and then how do I want to test it? Okay, how do I want to look at it? Well, we can do a bit of a cognitive walkthrough of it with key stakeholders. Just here's what we think, and they give you feedback. Or perhaps because education ultimately expresses itself in a type of learning experience. Maybe you create a bit of a live model test. We do this at LUMA all the time, where we stand up a learning experience, maybe a section of it, and we select people through it, and then have them tell us what they thought of it afterward, and we respond to the feedback and iterate. So, I think that might help.
You said a stand-up learning. What did you say? You do
a learning.
Stand up a live model test.
Oh, okay.
So
I like that better than we would say, do a pre and post survey. But we don't ever ask them maybe like, how did they feel? We ask them like, what did you learn? Do you know more now than you did? Like, I like this. I like the way you say it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can tack on a survey or rose thorn bud, after you do that, but what you're building and you immerse in the experience and you take a step back. Was that any good?
Was that any good?
What did you like? What didn't you like? Rose, thorn, and what ideas do you have to make it better? Buds, like boom, you've got more data you can shake a stick at, and now you can build it again. I'm like, okay, now let's try the live model test with 6 different people this way and see if we get better results, but then you can do a survey, like on a scale of 1 to 10, Likert or NPS. What'd you think? Would you tell people about this? No, I give it a 1. Like, okay, we got some work to do.
I have so much testing I want to do now.
Oh my gosh.
But I love this question because, I actually think, going back to that mindset of iterative, right? I mean, iterative is an action, right? But it starts with a mindset. And I think the mindset is that to us designers, right? And to everyone that might be listening to designers, not giving some kind of form to your ideas before it's real in the world, no matter how intangible it is, should sound as crazy to you as an architect not drawing or building a model of the house they intend to construct. It should be that crazy. It's like,
you got to get it out.
Not everybody's Gaudi who can just draw on the sand. I don't know if you know about that architect in Spain, and he just builds stuff. They got to plan and think about it and plan ahead and build models. And I think we should think the same way. So I love the question.
I agree, because that is one thing our audience has a never-ending supply of ideas and these, wild ways to connect our community or engage with them. And,
well,
you don't have to know all the answers, just test it out.
I think it's so important for us to know that we also get to prototype, and we don't have to spend all this time and effort and budget into designing this whole program when we could just find little ways to test it and to give some framework around our ideas, so it's easier for us to communicate it than just like, I'm going to create a program about blah or blank. And then,
I mean, even our pilot programs that we'll throw out there, from city perspective, like those are always way bigger than, than these smaller little prototype chunks. So
as Frank Lloyd Wright said, I think is that you can use the eraser on the drafting table or a sledgehammer on the construction site. It's like, it's the cost. And there's wonderful books about cost justification of usability. I mean, it is way cheaper to fail up front. But as things get closer to production and post-production, the cost goes up 100 times. I mean, there's numerous studies on this. So the whole idea of iteration is good business practice. It's like, fail early and often, as they say. Why? Because it's cheaper.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
I love it.
So there's one thing I have to follow up on before I move on to this next question. But when you talked about doing a cognitive walkthrough with stakeholders, can you unpackage that a little bit more?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
I love it.
We're not talking about the LUMA system per se, but just so everybody knows that we teach a system of methods. There are 36. They were called down from over 900 design methods in our research. And these are some of the most practical, sort of atomic, essential methods that I don't care what you're doing or what you're designing. If you learn these methods, you can sort of apply them to just about any design, any problem the world can throw at you. And so a kind of walkthrough is actually a variation on a usability test. Okay. It's so we have a thing called think aloud test. We teach a method called think aloud test. And so you can do that in a couple ways. One way is that I can have you use something in front of me and have you think aloud as you're doing it. A cognitive walkthrough would be, hey, there's nothing too interactive here. There's a syllabus. Let me just walk you through the basic things here. But then you review it, and as you're reading it, think out loud what you're thinking. Like, I don't even know what this means, or that there's no way you can do that in 20 minutes. And you're okay. So it's a way of using the information. You were interacting with the information. Sometimes we call that.
I always told I was annoying, but it's
fine. Yeah. So that's just a variation on a think aloud test that we teach.
Love it. No,
thank you for giving me more permission to think aloud.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
I love it.
All right. So you kind of hinted on those 36 methods, but I want to talk about the motto that's over your shoulder right now that says "in service of people." And you just mentioned how the program is divided into 36 methods that are kind of like the building blocks for the creative design thinking strategies, or whatever we're comfortable with calling them now. So
how people work together.
How people work together. There you go.
Yeah.
So, but you mentioned a 37th method, and I wanted to talk about that one.
You mean the other day when we were chatting?
Yes.
The secret 37.
I saw that. I remembered saying that. And I went, oh, that's not really a 37th method.
Well, it sounded really great when you said it, though.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the motto. But yeah, okay. I think it is this a way of a 37th. It's a 37th method. What I'm going to talk about here in a little bit is that it sort of permeates everything that we do. It's like when you think about putting sugar in tea, it sweetens it, right? It doesn't stand apart. It's inside of something, and so it's not a method that sticks out, but sort of is in all of them. It's our approach. And when I think about these service of people, what I think about, I mean, that's another way of stating human-centered design, which is for us a philosophy of design. Okay, and the philosophy is 99.9% of the time you are designing for someone else or to other people. You're always designing for other people. And it's your design must be in the service of those people. Now, sometimes it's different people, and sometimes those people will have competing needs, but it's never for yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not self-centered design; it's human-centered design. And this is a philosophy because I think if you're going to be empathetic, I think if you're going to use the tools, you've got to remember, what am I doing? Is in the service of people. If at the end of the day, what determines the more preferred situation? Me? No, it's the people. They tell us with their money or their votes or their lack of complaints, or it's got to be useful, usable, desirable to them. And therefore, by definition, that's the philosophy. Because you're always doing that. So in the service of people, and I would take a step further. I think when I think about human-centered design in the service of people, it's the default position is, how may I help you? What can I do for you? I think of design, good design, as a gift. Like, do you know that feeling you get when somebody hands you a really good gift? Like, it's like, if our designs for other people could feel like that, what they do is they anticipate. They don't just meet the needs; they exceed our expectations, and that's hard to do, particularly when we're talking about other people. But man, that's the gold standard. Yeah. When we can deliver something and people go, oh,
"How did you know?
Yeah. How did you know?"
Yeah.
I think that is the essence of human-centered design, and that's a philosophy of design. It's something that's always in the back of our mind. And so when we're doing our work, when we're iterating, when we're trying to be more empathetic, particularly when we don't have a bad day, it's the thing that gets out of bed is like, hey, we're doing this to help other people, right? It's in the service of the other people. And I would say, and I remember, that has to do with thoughts like humility. I think in order to do that, you got to have enough humility to not defend your ideas, but to have people shoot them down. I mean, I went to design school. The first thing they teach you is that don't identify. It's not about you. It's about the thing you're doing. And that if people hate the work, they don't hate you. Or if they don't like it, it's not about you. It's about the work, and it's a gift. That's a gift back to you to say, okay, I got this wrong. I'm going to do this. It's always in the service of people. So it's a bit of humility and generosity. It's 5:00. Do I stop working? No, I'm really invested in this because I think we're onto something that might make the world perhaps a little better if we can get this thing out the door. And so that's the thing that sort of, I think we need to have. And I would say is this, 37th method, or this thing that permeates all of this stuff.
Yes. And very applicable to anyone who works in municipal government, 100%.
Oh,
Yes.
Good.
Yes. I love
that.
I
mean, exactly.
That's so, you're right. That is so hard to do,
Mhm.
especially on the bad days when, like we said before, it's a lot harder to be empathetic when you're having a bad day, but in the
Yeah.
service of people and that's one of the things that I love about design thinking is that it forces you to constantly remember that because
Body.
at
Yes.
its essence, it is human centric. And I love that for anyone listening, if you hear this, then this should be like a ding, ding, ding. They're talking about design thinking is when you hear people start to ask the question, how might we? And
Mhm.
I love that it's like
Yeah.
that we of not like, how am I going to solve this? How are you going to solve this? It's how are we going to solve this? And I think that that's just such an important um, message for all of us to remember as we're collaborating on these
Yeah.
wicked problems, as you say.
Yeah.
Super
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I thought that you were almost going to hop right into answering the last and final question that we
Oh,
have for you. It's one that we ask all of our guests, the same question.
yeah.
But doing the work that Ariane and I used to do with utilities, we used to have people say, or just environmental work in general too, people would say, well, what difference does it make if I make this change? Like I'm just one person. And so obviously Ariane and I wholeheartedly disagree with that because we believe that change can be contagious and you never know what you're going to inspire in others.
The
So
podcast.
Yeah.
yes. So what is the one call to action that you're most passionate about that you believe could ultimately change the world? Nice, simple, easy one to end on.
Boom. First of all, I want to say that my wife knew what I was going to be doing. And she said, oh, tell them, she was listening into the conversation we had last week when we met, that she was awakened by the fact, remember I told you, tell me something I don't know, communicate to me, that 2 million people do not have access to clean, safe drinking water in America. Blew her mind. And so I just wanted to say that was eye-opening, and you guys are doing important work, and it got through to me, and she was eavesdropping and said, I didn't know that.
Thank you.
Wow.
And so anyway, I appreciate you. And I know there's other things.
One more in.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And, I know there's other things about infrastructure, crumbling infrastructure and things like that are very important to what you do, but that did get through. And so I want to applaud what you guys are doing. I think it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. So, okay. So, but what one thing I'm most passionate about, it isn't water. It is now, but the one thing, right? Everybody's got their thing, and I love it. And we're delighted that we could be of service to you guys as you pursue that passion for change. I would have to say that at the outset, you probably threw out this weird term for people who never heard it, this thing called universal design literacy.
Yes.
And that's just a thing of mine that I've been passionate about even before LUMA. I think we need to start looking at and teaching design as a liberal art, as found, even more than liberal art, as foundational to our education as reading, writing, and arithmetic. Okay. I mean, and I often use math as an analogy. The fact that we're not all mathematicians, but we're all math literate, has a lot to do with the way we live.
Right.
Think about the ones and zeros right now.
Yeah.
The computation the infrastructure that math provides. And think about yourselves. If you weren't math literate, probably couldn't even drive a car, understanding numbers, my tank is half full, you put portions, all those things, right? And I mean, I imagine a world in which hundreds of millions of people, maybe billions, let's say 1 billion people, imagine a world where a ton of people, right, have mastered the basic design skills so they can, frame problems really well together, deeply understand, people and situations, generate a lot of unconventional ideas. It just comes naturally, right? Naturally is addition, subtraction, multiplication. Build prototypes, test assumptions, iterate quickly, right? All the hallmarks of good designers. Imagine if that was a skill that was just there. Like we're literate in math. I know we're not math experts, but we use it at will. We use it to do what we do. And imagine if we were like that. Skilled at this changing existing situations into preferred ones. In my view, one idea can change the world. Certainly what you guys are doing can change the world. But mine would be more people leveling up in design and working together to bring about the millions of changes, big and small.
Yes.
This world needs, as I think would literally change everything, right? So it's not the one idea, it's leveling up. So people like you and people like, you name it.
All of you listening.
Everyone listening.
Are changing, making changes, feel equipped, are given permission to work together to make changes to the world around them. I think over time, all those changes will add up into a different world.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think we've got to put design in its proper context, teach more people, equip them, help them apply design the way you're applying design to your tough problems, but have everybody working like that. Not just a handful of people, but to have the whole water sector or the whole, government. I mean, imagine if laws were really designed.
Wow.
Really
policies,
designed.
One of my goals is to, Imagine if the Oval Office was full of whiteboards and they were working out problems instead of just
all these doodlers everywhere. And
I might want to run for president then.
Collaborating on stuff. So I think that I think that would be the one thing.
They were empathetic and questioning. Oh my God, my mind just flew.
Yeah, that would be the thing. Does that make sense?
Yes. How might we create a world of design thinkers?
How might Rogue Water Lab and LUMA Institute work together to make your dream come true, Chris?
Boom. I love it.
I love it.
I love it.
Wow.
Happy to. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for just putting this out into the world and to giving us this amazing system that we have used it's totally changed the way that I look at the world and the way that we do our work. The way that we do our work, and
it's changed my marriage. I'm like rose thorn bud this baby. Like, what do we need to change here? What do we need to grow?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we just did it interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Nope. You go because I was gonna wrap it up. But yeah.
I was gonna say we just did an interesting post about that, about using the methods at home.
Nice.
So organizing chores. In fact, I recently did one with my son Leo, he's 15 now. We're trying to think about what he might want to do for work, and he and his mother were having a bit of a discussion. But she wanted one thing, and he didn't want it. I'm like, well, let's explore. It was about being a lifeguard, and it's like, well, that's one way that he could find work. So we did a creative matrix, one of the methods we teach. We came up with 46 other ideas, and then we turned the sheet over and we did a bit of importance difficulty. Like, well, how can we understand which ones are the sweet spot for you, Leo? And so we just did it, and we had a bit of a better understanding of what he was looking for, what we were looking for in doing this. It wasn't about the money. It was about starting to teach him, how to participate and take responsibility.
Great.
So anyway, but yeah, great stuff.
That's awesome.
You can edit that out.
I love that real life application.
Yes, real life application.
Amazing.
Yeah,
yes.
It was good.
But again, thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights with us in our sector. It's really important to us. And so we were beyond fangirling and honored to have you join us. So thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank you both very much. I really enjoyed the conversation, and best of luck to you both.
We are so grateful for each and every one of you, all the members of our listening community. The Water in Real Life podcast is a Rogue Water Lab original. It's hosted by the H2 duo, that's us, Stephanie Corso and Ariane Shipley. It's produced by Rogue Water Lab, 12 Midnight, and Matte Black Sound. Sound design and music by Andre Black and Matt McNeil of Matte Black Sound.
For more Water in Real Life, check out our YouTube channel and sign up for our lab notes. You can find both at roguewaterlab.org.